Hi guys, Nisan is the first month of the Jewish calendar. Before the Jews left Egypt on the first day of the month of Nisan, God told Moses and Aaron, "This Hodesh, new moon or month, shall be to you the head of months." Thus the peculiarity of the Jewish calendar, because the year begins on Rosh Hashanah, which is the first day of the month of Tishrei. But Tishrei is not the first month, Tishrei is the seventh month. So the year begins in the seventh month, but the first month is basically where we would say the beginning of the year is, but it's not in the Jewish calendar for them. It's the seventh month where the year begins, but the first month is Nisan. Confusing. That's why they kind of say it's a peculiarity. But looking at the first month of Nisan, between March and April, it basically occurs at sundown on March the 16th and ends at sundown on March the 17th. So that would be where the first month, Nisan, begins. In this month, on the 15th of Nisan, which is March the 31st, on the Jewish calendar, 15 Nisan, March 31st, there's going to be a full moon, blue moon. And this is obviously occurring at the same time as Passover. So that's what we have here. Passover is occurring on 15th of Nisan, and at the same time we have a full moon, blue moon. Now Passover is where God helped the children of Israel escape from their slavery in Egypt by inflicting 10 plagues upon the ancient Egyptians before the Pharaoh would release his Israelite slaves. The 10th and worst of the plagues was the death of the Egyptian firstborn. The Israelites were instructed to mark the doorposts of their homes with the blood of a slaughtered spring lamb, and upon seeing this, the Spirit of the Lord knew to pass over the firstborn in these homes, hence the English name of the holiday. Now, obviously, that's a reference to passing over of the children that were in the homes of the doorposts that had been marked with the blood of the lamb. But for the rest, it was the death of their firstborn, Egyptian firstborn. Now, that's interesting for me because in the iPet Goat video, we appear to have this child who's been killed and kind of, as I would say, taken away at the same time as we appear to have a full moon, blue moon. And this year, those kind of things are kind of connected. Full moon, blue moon, and an association with a child, an only child, a firstborn, being taken away. And I think this is referencing Passover, March the 31st, I think is what this particular scene is referencing. And obviously, before that happens, we have this particular scene. And then after that follows this scene. Now, this woman obviously appears to be an Egyptian. Over here, what I noticed a long time ago is that if you're familiar with the statues of Egypt and how they have some of these statues with this long beard, if you're thinking this image upside down, it could be that this is the beard that they like to have so straight on the Egyptians, and then you've got upside down kind of leading from the beard going into the chin and the bottom lip and the nose, and the rest of the head is kind of buried down here in this kind of, like, I don't know, sand flood kind of area. Again, as the scene evolves, you get that this scene is Egyptian because of the scarab beetle that they have crawling on this boy's head and the practice that they have of marking the eyes of the dead. So clearly an Egyptian, and the only child that this mother seems to have, so the firstborn, which has been slain or taken away, and then later on we see in the scene that is actually ascending at the time of a blue moon, full moon, which coincides this year as March the 31st, full moon, blue moon, Passover on the Jewish calendar, the taking away of the firstborn of the ones that weren't sealed with the blood of the Lamb. It's all very interesting to me, because I think even going back a little bit in that scene, going back to just as the planes are coming out, if you're thinking March 15, which is basically, I'm using March 15, but I mean March 31st, the 15th of Nisan, which is over here, there may be a connection in the planes themselves. You've got 3 of them, which could reference March as the 3rd month. As they're flying, they shoot out 1 missile, which results in 5 missile type structures coming out. So 315, which does correspond on the Jewish calendar as March, the number 3, and 15, which is the 15, which is Passover, the full moon, blue moon, which is on March the 31st. So that's kind of what I wanted to bring to you. But interestingly enough, as well, I just want to point out one other thing. Rosh Hashanah, which is the celebration of the beginning of the year, the creation of Adam and Eve, is actually being celebrated this year on September the 9th and ends on the evening of September the 11th. So obviously there's a reference to 9/11 there and a reference to 9/11 there. So there's some clear connections with the Jewish people and these times that we're living in, which is why, you know, I'm making this video really, because a lot of people have pointed out to me March the 16th as, you know, a date that I should be looking at. And obviously in my last video I said I was going to concentrate more on April, which I still am, because that appears to be where the tsunami may come. But obviously before that, some of these events may take place. Now, I don't know if interpreting the planes as 3 and the 1 missile as 1 and the 5 missiles as 5 that come out should be connected as 315, which references March the 31st. That's just my interpretation. But if that does appear to be saying that occurs on that day, then on the same day, March the 31st, the time of the full moon, blue moon, and Passover, is what this scene is referencing. So it could be that in the Middle East, around March 31st, something kicks off there on Passover. And then after that, things escalate, obviously, around the globe, which then results in some events taking place on either April the 3rd or April the 18th, which affects seemingly the UK and the United States. So that's how I'm kind of seeing it. You guys, as always, you know, I'm interested to, you know what you think. But I think that's it. I think, you know, I don't like to say my interpretations are right, because, you know, sometimes they're wrong. But there is a connection there. Full moon, blue moon, taking away the firstborn, which is a reference to Passover, all occurring on March the 31st, which is the 15th of Nisan. And then we go into April. And because it's all so close together, I mean, we was looking at March the 31st a long time ago as well. I don't know what happened to it, really. It just kind of slipped into the other dates that sprung up. But here, right down this dividing line between the 16th and 17th of March, is where the 1st of Nisan begins, the new moon. And then after that, you know, there's references to the 22nd and the 23rd, because obviously the 23 and the 223 that you get from 22 in March. But I think I'm just going to skip over those two and leave it as March 31st, Passover. Something may occur in the Middle East, and then the following days is where it starts to affect the Western side of things. I think that's going to be in association with Russia and China and North Korea. So there you have it, guys. That's my interpretation. Let me know what you think. Have a good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and God bless.